Today I'm chatting with Cristina, performance and simulation head at Nissan Formula E. Her story begins watching F1 with her dad in Spain before strategically building an engineering career that led to the pinnacle of electric motorsport. What's fascinating about Cristina's journey is how she carved her path from general engineering to specialised Formula E roles. She created opportunities, developing tools when needed and constantly expanding beyond her job description. Cristina shares how watching Fernando Alonso race sparked her passion, her education from Spain to Cranfield in the UK, how marshalling at a Formula E event landed her first motorsport job, and her rise from simulator engineer to performance lead. So let's jump into a conversation full of insights about initiative, problem solving, and finding real joy in your work. Right then, Cristina, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you being here. Now, you are currently working in Formula E, but first, before we get to that, can you just explain to us where it all started? Where did your passion for motorsport begin?
Yeah, definitely. So happy to be here with you today. Where it always started, to be fair, it was in my young days, when I was a child. I very much remember being watching Formula One with my dad. So I'm originally from Spain, so my dad would do what every other Spaniard would do, switch on the TV to see Formula One and watch Fernando Alonso in his Renault. So I would then be on the sofa watching TV with him, and I remember watching F1 and remember being not so much into the driver side of things, but actually so fascinated by the cars and the people working on those cars, it being mechanics, engineers, and that. Remember thinking to myself, well, they have to be really intelligent, to be able to work on those cars, and not only work on those cars, but actually be able to be faster than everybody else and win in races. So it all started there, really, which meant from the very beginning I kind of knew that I wanted to go down the path of engineering. So then following that, I went and do STEM subjects at high school, and then through university I decided to follow up on an engineering degree. Now in Spain at the time we didn't have anything that was automotive or even motorsports specific, which meant I went down the road of a generalist engineering. And then after the first 4 years of studies, then I decided to go to the UK because I knew, since I had been following it so much, the world of Formula One specifically, I kind of knew like the UK is really the country to be. Not that you cannot make it if you're not in the UK, because we know today we've got a few teams outside the UK. But I think if you wanted to maximise the chances of working in that environment, I was targeting to go to the UK to do that. And then there was the opportunity to go to Cranfield and do a specific master's in automotive, which is what I did. So then I finished my studies at Cranfield. Following that from that, and from being there at Cranfield, there was an opportunity to volunteer that came around by the end of the year, and that was actually attending as a volunteer marshal what was the last race of season 2 of Formula E back in the day. We're in season 11 now, so it's a few years back now. And so this race was happening in London, and because I was in Cranfield, I was kind of close enough to attend this event, and that was my first hands-on experience on a motorsports event, which then led me to get in touch with the team during the race weekend, and then that unfolded into a few interviews and effectively getting the chance to join them a couple of months after that. So that's how I actually landed my first job out of university into a motorsports team.
Brilliant. And a couple of follow-up questions there. I suppose that the first one, if we go back to what you said there about coming to the UK, specialising in automotive engineering, why did you pick automotive rather than a more specific motorsport degree?
Yeah, I mean, that was very simply because it was a change program with my university, and in fact to go to Cranfield there were only certain masters that I could do, so I didn't have full freedom to choose within the options that Cranfield had. And I knew motorsport was there, but it wasn't something that I could have easily been able to make as a change student through my universities. It was a bit more of like an admin thing than anything. And so within the options that I had available, automotive, if it wasn't going to be motorsports, automotive was the one that would get me closer in terms of the learnings that I was going to be able to get out of that master's. So that hence why choosing that one.
Right. And then so when you mentioned when you got your opportunity to go to season 2 of Formula E, the last race, what did that look like? How did that opportunity come about? What was the opportunity, and how do you think that kind of helped you in your career from that point on?
So to be fair, I can't even remember how that came around. I think it was me just trying to look for hands-on experience, as they say, look for something and see where you can get your hands on. And in fact, because as I was saying earlier, it all came through watching TV really, and in my family there wasn't any background of motorsports at all, so I wasn't the type of person that be going to track every other weekend. So I was trying to look for what was available. And so there was this one. What I liked about it is that it was a simulation, and it being both through the full race weekend, which meant, okay, well, let's see what it is. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing, if I'm going to be standing at a certain corner of a track trying to flag if something goes on or what. It ended up being quite interesting in that I was volunteering with the FIA, so I'd have to be the one handing out the penalties and stuff to the teams, which was good in the sense that it allowed me to go to every other team and actually see from inside how they were working, what the engineers could be doing, mechanics and everything. It also meant that I was the one bringing up the bad news on the weekend, but I think it was a really interesting first-hand experience, because for sure it allowed me to really see from inside what was going on, which I think is a good thing, because when you're young, and I think as an outsider, on TV you only really see the glamour, I think, whereas motorsport is also long hours, and there's a lot of work that goes into putting up that show on TV. So I think it's good, definitely, no matter which type of hands-on experience that the young people coming through get, those sort of less glam experiences, to really answer the question of whether or not you think that is for you, because there may be a little bit of this divergence between what you see from the outside and what actually it looks like from the inside. So yeah, I took on that race weekend volunteering as a marshal, and then yes, from there I got in contact with one team eventually.
So it's through the marshalling where you kind of form some kind of network, some kind of connections with people at the team.
Exactly. I initially contacted a marshal association. I think from memory the name might have been something like the UK Motorsport Association, or it is some sort of a marshal association, and I reached out to them in first place. And they were the ones that were proposing specifically this event, because it's what they'd have around and available at that time of the year.
Brilliant. And then so the step on from there, what happened next?
Yeah, so what happened then I got this job with one of the Formula E teams at the time. They were actually based in Barcelona. And so I moved out to Barcelona. I started working with them as a simulator development engineer. So that was my first job really, and I started working mainly on setting up what was going to be the first simulator at the time to use it for the Formula E team.
When you say setting it up, do you mean like physically setting it up, like building the simulator in the sim room?
Yeah, it was physically from scratches. So they were deploying a simulator for the first time in their facilities. So I was supporting the group of engineers, physically setting up a simulator, plus doing all of the software calibrations and getting everything sorted so that we could start using it for race preparations the coming season.
Fantastic. And so did that highly relate to the the degree and the education that you'd had before that? Did you want to go into simulation, or was it that the job was available and you thought, right, let's grab this with two hands?
Yeah, at the start, it was the job that was available. To be fair, to an extent, it was in line with kind of what I wanted to do. And I think it's also fair to say when you're starting motorsports, you don't necessarily know exactly what you wanted to do. I knew at the time I was interested in vehicle dynamics. So in fact, starting in the simulator, it was relevant because simulator is a lot of software, but is also effectively working with a virtual race car. You really have to work on the correlation of the vehicle model, so it's actually very hand in hand with vehicle dynamics. So it was a bit of that was the job that they found that would suit me at the time, and it was certainly in line with where I wanted to grow as an engineer. So I think it was
brilliant. So you spent a year or so that was Campos, right, in Barcelona? Yeah. And then I suppose, what was the next step of the journey?
Yeah, so then from there I got a call from Jaguar. So there was a competitor team in Formula E to do a similar job in the UK. And I think I decided to take on a challenge because the job would be a bit more performance. It's still in a simulation environment, but a bit more performance oriented, which is where I wanted my career to go. And so then I made the move and joined the Jaguar team back in 2017. So as I said, I started in a simulator environment. I mean, even the simulator itself, I think from team to team, you can get very different simulator technologies. So even that was actually a change from the previous kind of simulation environment and simulator that I had none. So I started as a simulator performance engineer with Jaguar, and then a year and after that, I told them from the very beginning that I wanted to be a performance engineer, eventually been trackside. And I think in that respect, the team looked after me very well in that actually they allowed me to go track testing first and like build up on what it was to be performance engineer to then I think after a year or so being in the simulator, I started being a performance engineer on track and working as a performance engineer with one of the drivers on one side of the garage.
And was this something that you'd years before that you'd mapped out, or was it something that you'd gone along, kind of worked at Campos, thought, oh, I like this area a little bit more, let me go into kind of performance engineering? And did you think about it beforehand, or did you just naturally lead yourself there?
I think the specific role of performance engineer and the fact that I wanted to be doing that trackside, I think I nurtured that through my first experience. As I said at the very beginning, I knew I wanted to be involved in vehicle dynamics and learn on that area. But from there to say that I specifically wanted to be performance engineer, no, I think I definitely wouldn't say that that's how I saw myself coming out of university. I think it's something that you learn once you're part of a race team and that you actually see what the different engineers are doing. And I think even nowadays that the role of performance engineer can be so different because it can mean so many different things. And definitely performance engineer in Formula E is already different to what a performance engineer in Formula 1 or any other category can be. So to specifically see what that role looks like in Formula E and deciding that that's what I wanted to do is definitely something that came once I started to gain experience on the field. That's for sure.
And the reason for wanting to be trackside, performance engineer trackside, was that just to be closer to the action? Yeah.
To be fair, is it's kind of difficult to explain, but like be closer to the car. Yeah. It is something that makes up a difference, and the rhythm of being trackside, I think, is different to having a factories based role, and it is something that I wanted to experience, and still today is what I do, and it's something that's still today filling me with great of joy. So it is the fact of being able to see the car, I think, what attracted me the most, and it was that extra thing of wanting to be trackside.
So then at Jaguar, you went from performance engineer to performance and lead data science engineer. Just from my personal perspective, can you explain the differences between those roles?
Yeah. So as a performance engineer, I think really, if someone is asking what is it actually, what a performance engineer does, I think the fundamentals of it is that we've got to work with data, and nowadays what happens is that we generate tons of data on every race weekend. So it's a lot about how you can efficiently process that data and not get lost into just the pure data processing and cleansing and so being myself a performance engineer at the time, a clear need that I had is to have kind of like a tool on our environment that will allow me to efficiently make use of the data that we had in the team. And Formula E teams, bear in mind that quite small, especially if you compare it to like a Formula One team. So at the time, we didn't have enough tools at hand to do that job for us. And so what happened then is, as in any other area in such a small team, is that when you need something, actually you've got to do it yourself, because you don't really have a software team that you can go ask for something and you have it a week after. So it all started from there. It all started from my own need and the need of the performance engineers to actually have something as a tool that we could use to do our job more efficiently. And so through that, then I almost joined myself. In fact, at the same time, more or less, COVID kicked in, which meant we didn't go racing for a while. And so then I decided, okay, I'm gonna jump on it and actually do the programming of this tool kind of like myself a little bit. So it all started from there. And by no means I was an expert on doing all of that myself at the time, but through that you just learn how to do that different side of things, which was a different skill, and it was more into like the programming, which was also interesting because it meant that I could almost define the spec of what I wanted myself, because I knew I was going to be the end user. So it was a different kind of project, but it was all in all interesting. And then this kind of tool grew up in the team, and after a few months we decided that actually there was probably a space to create a group out of that, and it'd be what we call the data science group, which would basically be a group that be looking at how we can use in an efficient way the data that we had available in the team.
Brilliant. So showing some initiative and going to, go and get it yourself. I've heard that story many times from people who've been successful in motorsport, and it seems that's been the same with yourself. Yeah. And I was actually just at Jaguar this week myself, and speaking to one of the guys there, and they were saying one of the great things about working with the Formula E team is that you touch a lot more aspects of the race car and the race team, because inherently the teams are smaller. You get to do more stuff, whereas in Formula One you can kind of have your very narrow little window that you work within, whereas in Formula E you get to see a lot more of the entire team. Yeah,
that's right. I think it's also fair to say the complexity of the cars is different, but surely being a small team, it means that you can actually get to see many different areas, because in fact less amount of people's got to cover up for the larger amount of tasks. So then
at the end of 23 you left Jaguar and went to Nissan, and now you're the head of performance and simulation there. Mm-hmm. I suppose first question is, why did you change, and what does the new role look like?
Yeah, I think the change came about because I had then been doing the on the performance role for about, I think, 6 years or so when I decided to move on, and I saw it as a challenge more than anything. I think to say, well, okay, now after a few years of being that myself, what would it look like if I had to lead myself a group of performance engineers? So I saw that as a challenge for myself, and I thought it'd be interesting to have the chance to have that opportunity to make that happen at Nissan, and so I decided to take up on the challenge. And what it is like, so as you said, is the performance and simulation group. So it's effectively up to 4 different group of engineers that come together under the umbrella of the performance and simulation group that we call it. And I think these are groups that effectively are very well interconnected, because performance engineers and energy management engineers that are part of the performance group, they very much need simulation, and they very much need to use the simulator and all of the tools that we put in place on the simulator environment. So it makes sense that those 2 groups that are so interconnected, they work part of the same, under the same umbrella. So that's basically why I decided to take up on the role, and I saw it most of all as a challenge.
Brilliant. And so within your role currently, you mentioned earlier that you're traveling. So are you going to all of the races, and what does a race week look like for you?
Yeah, that's right. So I travel with the team to all of the races during the season. And so how a race weekend could look like, I think if we take, for example, say the Saturday, where the scheduling in Formula E is pretty much always the same. So on Saturday you're going to have a practice session, then a qualifying, and then a race. I think the race weekends are very structured, and we actually make an effort such that they are structured, so that we all know what we need to do, and it's almost repetitive, so that it is consistent, and everybody knows what we all need to do. So we'll arrive at the track very early in the morning, and we leave very late at night. I think that's definitely long hours. Having said this, though, there are what we call the FAA curfews, meaning that there is a time in the morning before which no one can be at the garage, and there is a time at night past which everybody must have left the garage as well. Otherwise,
yeah.
You get
Having said that, though, I've just seen the timetable for the upcoming race, and practice is at 7:30, right?
Yeah, exactly. Practice happened very early in the morning, which
so
means
you're getting there a couple of hours
about
before.
5 or so. I think that's going to be about it. Yeah. Exactly. So we'll arrive on track about a couple of hours or 2 hours and a half before the first session of the morning. On arrival, we'll do our radio checks. Radio is a system that I think is fundamental for our operations. And so we do our usual radio checks, and then we do a bit of a quick engineering catch-up first thing in the morning, especially say if it's a Saturday, that would have already been a practice session on Friday. So we use half an hour in the morning for everybody to catch up and share the fundamental learnings and the main things that we need to know for the day. After that, then drivers are going to come in, and then we do the briefing before the session. So at that point is where race engineers are going to share the run plans, and so everybody is in line with what we're going to do on the practice session. We'll discuss whether there is any tests to do across the cars. We'll discuss what setup we're going for, if there's anything on performance system that's changed. We'll discuss tire strategies, what we're going to tests on the practice session, and so all of the main bits of the engineering side of things get discussed and then shared with the drivers. So that meeting will be done around about 30 minutes before the start of the practice session, and then we've got the FP2 is usually on a Saturday, FP1 would have been on Friday. And then during the session, for example, I'm a bit of a floating engineer in that, typically we're going to have race and performance engineer dedicated to each side of the garage. And I'm going to be there to cover any need if there is an issue, if there is a bit of analysis that needs doing live, if there's any sort of support that a race engineer may need, performance engineer or tire engineer. These are the main engineers I'm going to be interacting with, together with the NM energy management that we call engineer as well. So during the session, I'm a bit of a floating person for anything that may be needed outside normal scenarios. After the session, then we'll have the usual driver debrief. So we go very quickly to the round of a table with our two drivers for them to tell us what are the main limitations that they have found so far. And from there, we've really got, I think, is about an hour or even less than that, depending on the schedule before the quali, which means this is probably the most intense hour of the weekend, in that then you've got to really recap very quickly what's happening in FP and get ready for quali. So there is our main focus as engineers is to make sure that we are aware of the limitations and how we can go around them as quick as we possibly can before quali.
It's not a lot of time, right?
It's definitely not a lot of time.
Are you always, there's always more that you would want to do, I presume, and that's a very quick turnaround.
Yeah, there's often more that when you can physically really cover in an hour's time, which means it's all about prioritizing. Is okay. If one driver's got 5 things that you like to address, which are the top 3 that can gain us the most performance? Okay, we'll focus on them, make sure that they are where they need to be for quali, and really is about prioritizing. Is if you can't get through everything before you have to be out on quali, which are the areas for us to focus that can gain us the most relative performance. So that'd be quali then. If we're doing well enough, then you make it to the duels, which means then you run into the set of duels, from quarterfinals, semifinals to finals. And then after that, we'll recap. So drivers will come out the car, and then we'll do a joint debrief, and then our head switches to the race preparation, which again, your race time preparation is about 3 hours, but in fact, if you make it all the way to the final duel, in fact, your time to prepare the race shrinks, because in fact the race doesn't get delayed. There's always that 3 hours time, and then the farther you make it to those, the less time you've got to prepare the race. But so we'll quickly recap and debrief with the drivers, and then the focus at that point kind of like switches to this more energy management group that have hopefully been a bit less busy during quali because they've been focused on preparing the race, and then is their time together with the strategists to come in and say, okay, this is how we see the race unfolding. And then again, before the race, we'll recap and get together again with the drivers, and we'll go through what plan is going to be ahead of the race, which the plan can be different depending on where each driver is positioned, and then they'll take us to run about the time where the cars need to go are lined up on the grid.
There we go. Busy, and then so just to take a step back from that, a Formula E weekend would usually be a Friday, Saturday, sometimes a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or is it always?
Exactly, yeah. At a minimum, it'd be Friday and Saturday. So the Friday action, it starts with FP1, or at times we've got what we call a shakedown as well. Fridays as well is the day where we do the track walks with the drivers. So that means that we get to do a walk around the track and in fact take that time to take various measurements on grip and tarmac characteristics that we engineers use. So that happened on a Friday morning, and then the first session you have on a Friday afternoon, and then Saturday. And if we've got what we call the double header, so it's 2 races on the same venue, same weekend, then you also have the same on Sunday.
So if you've got a 3-day race weekend and you free practice on the Friday, when are you arriving and when are you leaving?
Yeah, so take for example, Miami. We're flying out on Tuesday, so we'll be on track on Wednesday. We do the setup of a garage with the mechanics, the full team. That's the setup of a garage, which means around about Wednesday lunchtime, we'll have everything set up to start working. So we have the engineering office set up Wednesday afternoon, and then Wednesday afternoon, Thursday are kind of like a normal office days in a way. And then we fly out the day after the race. So in this case, for example, Miami, we've only got 1 race on Saturday, we're flying out on Sunday.
On a Sunday. So it's
back to base.
By the time you kind of get home, it's a full week away.
It's a full week away.
Yeah, especially for and then probably longer for some of the the Asian ones, the Asian races.
Definitely.
And so, Cristina, with regards to what you mentioned there about the race weekend, because you're head of performance and simulation, are you dealing a lot with the people working at base still, I presume, to see what the correlation's like, to speak to the driver in the sim?
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, we've also got an extension of the race team. That's what we call the race ops. So they are back at the factory. Every team can have up to 6 people working at a factory. So they're going to be, as you said, mostly be doing the simulator work. So they do a lot of correlation, which in fact in Formula E is quite crucial, because when they build up tracks in the middle of the cities, which are built kind of like a week before we get there, they cannot always be put together as you thought that was going to be, or as the CAD file said. So there is a degree of uncertainty between what you had in the what we call the simulator preparations that we do a week before we fly out with our drivers, and what you actually may find when you arrive on site. So there is this level of uncertainty and the track variability, and then that means that we've got to have our people back at the factory ready to almost redo a fair amount of the simulations that we run if there is a track change, for example.
Sure. Okay, so you're flying back home Sunday. So you're home Sunday night or Monday morning. What does the period before the next race look like? Does the job look like? Do you get day off or not? Straight back into the office?
Day offs are difficult, I think, especially now that we're heading into like an every 2 weeks race. It is difficult. Yeah. I think what happens after a race is what we call the post event. So it's okay, regardless really of the result, whether you've had a good weekend or a very bad weekend, we go through the same analysis. So every group is going to do the analysis of their weekend. And so my job on that is to make sure that I kind of like build up a common roadmap of, okay, what is it that we're going to be addressing for the next race, and kind of been doing the follow-up of how we're going to be addressing the main issues, or at times it's not issues, at times are things that we want to develop or upgrades that we want to bring onto the next event. So it's a combination of following up on analysis, debriefs after the weekend, and then quickly preparing the task list for what needs to be in place before the next simulator session.
Okay, yeah, and then you and what does motorsport's unusual, of course, because we have these seasons. What does the off season look like?
The off season, I often say, is almost busier than the main season, because in the off season you get to do the long term projects that you don't have the time to do when you're in season. Yeah, I mean, the off season, there are no 2 days that are the same. They're really not. In fact, my job back at base is a little bit halfway between same day. I mean, you could have analysis of the current season car, and at the same time you can have work done on the future generation car. So a few months back in the off season, at the end of season 10 after London, there was a lot of analysis of the season that we had just finished, but there was also the development ongoing on the car that we're racing today that we had not yet homologated. So, and it's the same today. Today we've got a season that started a few months ago, but we are already designing ahead of the Gen 4 that Nissan has signed up for, and so these two coexist together, and then you get in the same day to work a little bit on today's car and also on the future car. That's one side of things. The other side of things is as much as part of my job is to continue to do the technique, because that's fundamentally what I've been educated to do. There is also a fair amount of organization that comes with it, and that is mostly a little bit what I was saying earlier is about the roadmap is across these different groups of engineers, is to make sure that everybody's got clear visibility of where we're heading towards, and that everybody is communicating as it should be, and that avoid things like a few of us looking at a specific thing and maybe some other items being disregarded, and trying to make sure that everybody is aligned and everybody's got the right amount of information of what's going on and what we're doing and where we're going to get.
Fantastic. So just to kind of wind things up here, if you were to give yourself some advice, some of the lessons that you've learned along the way back when you were first stepping into a motorsport job, what would be a couple of things that you would tell yourself?
What I probably said to myself, I think you probably don't forget to enjoy, I think, as well. I was someone that I think I always tried to work as hard as I could, because the one thing that I always said to myself is motorsports is such a tiny world that only the best are going to make it then, and if I want to be one of those, then you can only work as hard as you can. So that was always the one thing that I had in mind. But I think together with that, I think it is important also to enjoy it, because it's definitely a unique job, the one that we have, and I think it's important to enjoy what we do.
Yeah, great piece of advice, because once you get going and you're busy, it's easy just to have your head down, keep on working, and not look up and see how lucky you are to work within such a fantastic industry.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, Cristina, thank you so much for your time. I think that's a great time for us to wrap up there. Appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll speak to you soon.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much. Cristina, Scott, thank you.